There is a particular quality of silence that falls when something ancient looks at you. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of absolute attention. Of something that has survived for 200 million years by paying very close attention indeed. I want to tell you about a morning in Malaysia, in 1987, when a lizard taught me more about power, respect, and the art of negotiation than 30 years in business ever had. I had gone out early, before the heat set in. The research station was 2 kilometers from the river, and I had made the mistake, if that is what it was, of taking the shorter path through the undergrowth. The kind of path that doesn't really announce itself as a path. It merely presents itself as a gap between things. And there, on a flat stone at the bend where the path met a slow brown stream, was a water monitor. A large one. Perhaps 2 meters from nose to tail, perhaps a little more. It was utterly still. It had been there, I suspected, since before I had woken up. It was not startled by me. It was not alarmed. It simply redirected its attention, that ancient, reptilian attention, and looked at me. And I stopped walking. I want to be precise about why I stopped. It was not panic. It was not calculation. Something older than either of those things had spoken, somewhere in the architecture of my nervous system, and it had said, "Stop." You must understand what it means to be looked at by something that does not need you. That has no particular use for you. That has been a successful design for longer than mammals have existed. The monitor lizard looked at me the way a magistrate looks at a legal document, examining it for its relevance to the current proceedings, and finding it, after a moment, to be of limited consequence. It was this quality of considered indifference, that I found so profoundly instructive. I was not prey. But I was not the apex of this moment. I was a large, soft-bodied mammal standing in the morning sun, and the creature before me could, had it wished to, have done me considerable damage. And we both knew this. That shared knowledge was the entire negotiation. Here is what the lizard was communicating, in the only language apex predators actually speak: I am here. I know what I am. I know what you are. Nothing needs to happen, if you understand this. That is the contract. That has always been the contract. Not written. Not spoken. Not enforced by threat, because the threat is implicit in what the creature simply is. The monitor did not bare its teeth. It did not hiss. It did not perform aggression. It simply remained itself, completely, and the power of that, the sheer gravitational weight of a creature that has never had any reason to doubt what it is, communicated everything necessary. I stepped carefully to the side. I gave the stone a wide berth. And I walked on. In the years since that morning, I have thought about it many times. I have sat in boardrooms watching people negotiate, watching them perform their dominance, raising their voices, interrupting, leaning forward, establishing territory through noise and aggression. And I have thought, you have misunderstood the lesson. The apex predator does not perform. It does not raise its voice. It does not lean forward. It is, and the isness of it is enough. The crocodile doesn't warn you. The great white doesn't circle threateningly. They are. And that being carries within it every consequence necessary. The most powerful negotiating tool in existence is the knowledge, shared by both parties, that you could, if provoked, do something definitive. Not the threat of it. The simple, quiet truth of it. We have an expression in English, someone put the fear of God into me. We use it lightly, for tax collectors and difficult relatives and spiders in bathtubs. But the original meaning was something much more serious. It referred to a realization so profound that it recalibrated your entire understanding of your place in the order of things. To truly fear something, in this older, deeper sense, is not to panic. It is to become suddenly, urgently awake to what you are in relation to it. It is to feel, with the whole body, the absolute reality of something larger than your self-regard. The ancient shepherds who wrote about fearing God were not talking about being frightened of lightning. They were talking about the encounter with something genuinely beyond you, beyond your comfort, beyond your narrative, beyond your sense that you are the protagonist of the universe. Here is a fact worth sitting with for a moment: we are apes. Clever apes. Remarkable apes. Apes who build cities and compose symphonies and argue about the nature of consciousness. But apes. And for most of our history, we were not the apex predators. We were, for the large animals of the Pleistocene, a reasonably sized snack. We are shaped by that. It is in us. The darkness makes us afraid because things used to come out of the darkness and eat us. The deep water makes us uneasy because things lived in deep water that regarded us as food. Our nightmares are full of pursuit because we were, for a very long time, pursued. This is not a weakness. This is information. This is the accumulated knowledge of 1,000,000 years of surviving encounters with creatures that were, by every physical measure, more dangerous than us. We survived by learning to read the room. By developing an exquisite sensitivity to the presence of power. Consider the crocodile. It has been essentially unchanged for 80 million years. 80 million. The dinosaurs went extinct, the continents drifted, the climate rewrote itself a dozen times over, and the crocodile remained, not because it refused to change, but because it had found, early, a form so perfectly suited to what it does that improvement became almost beside the point. The crocodile hunts with extraordinary patience. It may wait for days, perfectly still, watching the waterhole with eyes that have evolved to see in near total darkness. It does not hurry. It does not worry. It has no anxiety about whether its strategy is working. It is in complete alignment with its own nature, and that alignment is a form of mastery that no amount of nervous intelligence can replicate. When the moment comes, it acts. Completely. Without hesitation, without reconsideration. And then it waits again. If you could ask the crocodile to distill its wisdom into a single sentence, I believe it would say, know what you are waiting for, and when the moment comes, do not hesitate. And then there is the wolf. Of all the predators that shaped the human imagination, perhaps none left so deep a mark as Canis lupus. The wolf was everywhere our ancestors were. It hunted the same prey. It moved through the same forests. And it watched us. God, it watched us. The wolf has extraordinary eyes for a carnivore, forward-facing, yes, but also warm. Amber, often. Intelligent in a way that unsettles. When a wolf watches you, it is not the blank regard of the crocodile. It is something that looks back at you and seems to understand exactly what it is seeing. The wolf pack hunts through cooperation, through communication, through something that looks uncomfortably like strategy. They have territories. They have hierarchies. They have, in short, a society. And when your society and theirs overlap, there is a negotiation, and the terms of that negotiation are not primarily favorable to the apes. The Norse understood this. In their mythology, the wolf is not a creature to be slain and heroized over. The wolf is Fenrir, the great devourer, bound by the gods themselves with a chain made of impossible things, the sound of a cat's footstep, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. Even bound, Fenrir terrified Asgard. And at the end of all things, at Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, Fenrir would break free and swallow the sun. You don't make that myth about something you are not afraid of, in the deepest possible way. And yet, the Norse also kept wolves. Odin himself had two, Jerry and Freki, who sat at his feet. The relationship with the wolf was never simple extermination. It was always more complicated. It was always edged with respect. With the acknowledgement that this creature was something you could be allied with if the relationship was right, but never something you could afford to take lightly. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? We teach our children that story. 3 pigs. Straw, sticks, and stone. The wolf that huffs and puffs. We have turned it into something comic, something safe, something that ends with the wolf outwitted and the pigs triumphant. But why do children love the story? Why does it hold them? Because underneath the comic surface, it touches something very real, the knowledge that there are forces in the world that can undo everything you have built, if you have not built it properly. That the world is not arranged for your convenience. That there is something outside your walls that does not acknowledge your right to comfort and safety, and that the only adequate response is to build well, to build honestly, and to understand what you are building against. The wolf in that story is not evil. It is simply absolute. It applies force that your structure either can withstand or cannot. There is no appeal. There is no negotiation. There is only, is what you have built sufficient? There is a school of thought in evolutionary psychology that says our deepest fears, of darkness, of heights, of large teeth and sudden movements, are not learned, but remembered. Not remembered personally, but racially. Collectively. The fear of the dark is the memory of the night, 10,000 years ago, when something moved in it that you could not see but that could certainly see you. The fear of the serpent, which appears across every human culture, even in populations that have never encountered a dangerous snake, may be older than our species itself. Our primate ancestors lived for 60 million years in a world where the serpent was real, immediate, and fatal. That information may be written into us below the level of thought. And if that is true, if we carry in us the distilled experience of 1 million encounters with things larger and more dangerous than ourselves, then perhaps what we call instinct is actually wisdom. The wisdom of everyone who survived long enough to pass something on. The quiet, cellular knowledge of what to respect and what to fear, and why those two things, at a certain level, are the same. But of all the predators, real and imagined, that humanity has conjured, there is one that stands apart. One that represents not simply a physical threat, but a metaphysical reality. A creature that synthesizes the speed of the serpent, the strength of the lion, the wisdom of ages, the power of storms, the depth of the sea. The dragon. Every culture that has reached sufficient complexity has imagined the dragon. That is not coincidence. That is the mind of our species, working at the outermost edge of what it can conceive, trying to build a symbol adequate to the largest truth it knows, that there are forces in this world before which you are small, and that your relationship with those forces determines, more than almost anything else, what kind of life you will live. The Western tradition mostly gave us dragons as problems to be solved. St. George. Beowulf and the Barrow Worm. Sigurd and Fafnir. The dragon guards treasure, breathes fire, must be slain. The hero who kills the dragon gains honor, wealth, the princess, in that order, roughly. This is a useful story. It says, overwhelming power can be overcome, if you are clever and brave enough. It says, the thing you fear most might be defeated. It is optimistic, in a combative sort of way. But it misses something. Something the East understood more clearly. The dragon of China, of Japan, of Korea, and Vietnam and the whole Pacific world, is a different creature entirely. The Eastern dragon does not lurk in a cave hoarding gold. It does not need gold. It is the embodiment of the water, of rivers and rain and the deep sea. It controls weather. It regulates fortune. It is, in the most literal sense available to pre-modern thought, the operating system of reality. The Eastern dragon is not an obstacle. It is not an antagonist. It is a fact. It is something you must come to terms with, the way you come to terms with the ocean, not by conquering it, but by learning its nature deeply enough that you can navigate it with something approaching respect. In Chinese imperial tradition, the emperor ruled under the mandate of heaven, Qianming, a mandate that had to be continually renewed through correct behavior, through alignment with the deeper order of things. Lose that alignment, and the mandate would withdraw. The dragon would withdraw its favor. Floods would come. Harvests would fail. Dynasties would fall. This is not superstition, poorly understood. This is a sophisticated political philosophy in mythological clothing, the idea that power is not possessed, it is borrowed. That the borrowing comes with obligations. That the thing you borrowed it from is patient, is ancient, is utterly without ego, and will eventually have it back. The Japanese Ryu, the Korean Yong, the Vietnamese Rong, all variants of the same deep truth. Wisdom beyond human scale. Patience beyond human comprehension. Power that does not need to demonstrate itself, because it is the medium through which everything else occurs. When you encounter a dragon in Eastern mythology, you do not fight it. You approach it as you would approach a supreme court, with complete honesty about what you need, with evidence that you deserve to be heard, with the knowledge that you will receive exactly what you deserve, and not 1 grain more. And so I return, as I always do, to the stone by the slow brown stream. To the monitor, and its ancient eyes, and the silence that fell between us. What it taught me, in that morning, without words, without drama, without so much as a flicker of what you might call emotion, was this: presence is authority. Certainty is power. The creature that knows exactly what it is does not need to prove it. We spend so much of our lives performing. Performing confidence, performing authority, performing the version of ourselves we hope will be taken seriously. The lizard does not perform. The wolf does not perform. The dragon, in its Eastern incarnation, does not perform. They simply are, completely, without apology and without exhibition. And in that completeness, that uninterrupted isness, there is a kind of power that no amount of noise can manufacture. I stepped to the side. I gave the stone a wide berth. And I learned, perhaps, the most important thing a negotiator can know: true authority never has to raise its voice. It is already heard, in the silence that comes before it speaks.